Well, one of the issues with methyl bromide is that it gave yields that were absolute yields. They were higher yields than what we really should be attaining if we want to be sustainable. So post-World War II, the world became a chemical world. We used pesticides, fumigants, and really chemicals to control the system, the natural balance in society. That gave us yields that were very much one end. They were increased threefold what they used to be before World War II. Those fumigants now cause problems such as ozone depletion, tropospheric pollution with volatile organic compounds, food issues with streams, killing being biocides. They kill populations of organisms in soil. And they have buffer zones. There's human health issues related to their use. So this meeting is an essential part of trying to determine what's sustainable. What are the future products we're going to use? And the second part of my talk today was about what are some of the exciting things that we can do to not so much eradicate diseases and weeds and get rid of them out of the system, but prevent them attacking the crop. So things like biofumigants, which modify the system a bit, but they don't get rid of everything. Biopesticides. Can we put a pesticide around a root system to give it protection? Can we use nutrients and biopesticides together to do the job? Can we use endophytes, which are fungal organisms that form symbiotic associations with host plants? Can we use them to ward off other organisms because they're able to live in a plant harmoniously? Can we use the toxins from those or the products that they produce to ward off other organisms because they've learned how to do it? So there's a lot more knowledge needed now to control the disease, and we're finding that a lot of them are very successful, not to give the same yields as methyl bromide, but 80–90% of those yields. And because of products and breeding and things like the modern pesticides, targeted pesticides, our knowledge on how to control plants, we're able to produce yields that are threefold what we used to do at the start of the 19th century in many places, both developed and developing. But that's centralised in very high value production areas where they can afford the input costs, the large areas of land, economies of scale. And so there's really a problem with food security in those advanced agricultural farming situations. It's when we get to the poorer countries where we end up with the higher populations and its distribution of the food within those that we need to address. We're going to start stretching our food security issues because we're maximising land now within a lot of the developed and developing country areas. However, we were talking about controlling production in enclosed systems and improving yields threefold by going inside a glasshouse or a biosphere or a vat, and so the food systems will change in the next 10–20 years. What we knew as a production outdoors might become a nutritionally healthy muesli bar that's got every function under the sun produced in a vat with a biological organism. The innovation and the creativity that's occurring for future plant pathology and sustainability is coming out of the developing countries, where they haven't had the fumigants on the big areas, and so they're looking at better rotation crops, macuna, different grass systems to get toxins and in a rotation system that will control pathogens and weeds. Tobacco, for instance, was a huge methyl bromide use in the world. In Brazil, they have all the systems now that cope with growing tobacco without methyl bromide, one of the biggest in the world, and they did it before the developed countries did. And so there's lots of innovation coming out of both developed and developing countries. I think the norm is that, or the thinking is that organic food production will reach a plateau. Maybe I think it's something like 4 or 5% of a production within a particular region, because beyond that the market forces will then make the product not equitable to grow that way, too expensive. So that seems to be roughly where it's at now. I could be totally wrong, but that's sort of where it seems to fit. Thanks to the Ag West Bio group for getting us across to get this interaction going. I think it's fantastic to have the biofumigant people with the biopesticide people who've got a lot of knowledge on sustainable controls, and I think that's essential for these types of meetings. We're also talking about getting the microbial ecologists in, the people who go to the rhizosphere meetings, for soil-borne disease control. Generally the pathologists and ecologists are sort of there. We need to be there now, together, and I think that'll really help as well.